Good morning and welcome from beautiful Chapel Hill. Thank you for joining us today for what I hope will be our last virtual Lineberger Club event. My name is Holly Gall and I am Senior Executive Director of Development and Communications for UNC Lineberger. We have a wonderful day or morning in store for you. And Shelley, I'd like to turn it over to you to get us started.
Thanks, Holly, and thank all of you for joining us. Good news, bad news. We have almost 100 of you here today. The bad news is we're not together. This used to be, it is, and will be again, one of my favorite events of the year. We would be together either at the Carolina Inn or the Carolina Club or some other venue. We'd get to chat, we'd get to hug. Hopefully that comes back. We are planning to do Fast Break live in March. We're planning to do our Board of Visitors live. And we absolutely hope there's no zombie-cron next year that keeps us from doing our Lineberger Club. The Lineberger Club is a great opportunity for us to thank you and hopefully to make you proud of your cancer center. There's an extraordinary fact that they gave me. I think I get this every year. But it still stuns me. There are 250 individuals and companies and couples, 250 that have been Lineberger Club members. That's mean they've been significant contributors to the Cancer Center. 250 for 10 years. We have many more donors than that, but 250 of you have been incredibly loyal over a time where the Cancer Center has grown dramatically. One of those unfortunately passed, and I will, it's important to mention Pearl Schechter, who was one of the original Board of Visitor members in the early 80s, who stayed with us until her 102nd birthday when she passed away a couple of months ago. And Pearl helped start the Seed Grants program, but she's the quintessential investor in Lineberger over 3 decades. I want to thank her, and her family are still engaged, but I want to thank you for being here. My job today is to make you proud of your cancer center. There are 70 NCI designated cancer centers. Only about 50 are large, comprehensive cancer centers, but literally there are only about 10 that are in the top rank. And we know that because we get reviewed, and we've been designated exceptional 3 times in a row. We are one of the few cancer centers, I don't believe there's another public comprehensive cancer center that can say that. There are some household names around the country that you would recognize, but it puts your cancer center and your investment in us in the top ranks. We're proud of innovation, and we're going to talk about research today in a way that excites me still. It's just extraordinary. But our motto is today's best care and tomorrow's best hope. Today's best care has grown. When we opened the cancer hospital, we were seeing about 3,000 patients a year, new patients. This year, we're going to see 200,000 visits, about 12,000 new patients. That means that your cancer hospital, your cancer center, are seeing 1 in every 5 patients that get cancer in North Carolina. Now, we don't treat all of them here because people come from hundreds of miles away, but we are touching and improving cancer in the state. And we've been the recipient of your generosity and the state's generosity. The Cancer Fund has allowed us to invest, and you're going to hear a lot about one of those investments today. The state has provided resources for us to bring in faculty, technology, better care, but it's been a good investment for the state. We actually just did an economic impact report of the Cancer Center and the state support, and the state is realizing about $10 new for every dollar they invest in us. So we're not only good clinically, we're wonderful clinically, but we're good for the economy and for the state. The things that we do that are new are reported in the literature. Our faculty published 900 papers last year. About a quarter of those were in the world's top journals. And we had, I believe, 10 of what are called the Thomson Reuters, top publishers in the world as a part of your cancer center. So we are seeing patients, we're innovating, we're doing pretty amazing things. You're going to hear a lot about the CAR-T program today, and so I will save that for later on. That is perhaps one of our most innovative ways of doing things, but we have clinical trials across the board. You know, the other thing you might have heard about recently, and you'll hear a lot more about over the next couple of months, including in Cancer Lines, is this remarkable gift from an anonymous couple who have provided a gift of $25 million for Lisa Carey, who was involved in care of their loved ones, to start the nation's first triple-negative breast cancer center. We are terrific in that area. Lisa, Chuck, you'll hear some work from John Cerrode. You'll hear a number of faculty that have built a breast cancer program that's second to none in the country. And that's now been recognized by a major gift, a gift the likes of which we actually have never gotten before. And it will provide an enormous opportunity for us to push the envelope in this particularly aggressive form of cancer. But in doing so, the science will benefit everything from all types of cancer, pediatric to our seniors. So that gift is a remarkable imprimatur of a program that we have grown. We've never really called it a breast cancer center of excellence. I think it spoke for itself. But I think one of the things that we have talked about and will present to you in various fora are other diseases that we believe that Lineberger science can impact. We have started a pancreatic cancer center of excellence under Jen Ye's direction. Pancreatic cancer is one of the few where we have not moved the needle with respect to cure and death rates. It's a deadly disease and one in which Lineberger science, we believe, can move forward. Likewise, we've chosen to emphasize a woman's cancer that's really understudied, endometrial or uterine cancer, as you may know it. It's a disease which it flies under the radar in terms of publicity, but it kills a number of women. It is something that is particularly problematic in the state of North Carolina. There's a minority disparity. Black women are much more likely to die from this disease than white women. And it's one of the few cancers that is going up in incidence. So we are going to take our Lineberger Brain Trust and move forward on that. Another cancer that we are emphasizing that you will hear about is the bladder cancer program under Matt Malowski and Billy Kim and Matt Nielsen, Angie Smith. These are ways that we can take your generosity, your support, the state's support, and coalesce things that make the Lineberger Cancer Center national leaders. We can impact the state of North Carolina, and through our science, we can impact the country. We also don't forget all the other aspects of cancer prevention and early detection. We have a big state, 600 miles across. We are the second largest rural population. Texas is first, but North Carolina has the second largest rural population. And the cancer outcomes in the rural areas are not as good as those in the Triangle and the Triad and around Charlotte, Mecklenburg. So we have a community outreach and engagement group that is taking data from all over the state every cancer case we dump into our databases. And we are expanding that with a new emphasis to develop a database that tells us about the health needs and the health assets in all 100 counties, because we believe in understanding what goes on county by county can help us influence prevention, early detection. You're going to hear about our treatment of advanced cancer in our CAR-T program. It is infinitely better to prevent cancer or detect it early when there are no problems. So those are the things that we are really working on to make to turn your great support into a way of thinking, a way of innovating, a way of doing research, a way of caring for patients that makes us special. We want to thank you. And this program, I think, will hopefully do that in a way of helping you learn about some of the things that we're doing. Now, it always is more impactful if we can tell a story. I hope I've told a few of them very briefly, but now we're going to have a wonderful story from Matt Foster and Sabrina Shelton. They're our guest of honor today. Matt is an associate professor who takes care of leukemia and lymphoma and myeloma patients. He is really the linchpin of our leukemia care program. He's working on a couple of aspects to make it even easier on patients. You'll hear about those later on. But Matt is a doctor and a great one. And he is taking care of Sabrina Shelton in a wonderful way. And I'm going to turn it over to them and let them talk about the care and let Sabrina talk about her experience. So thank you. I'll be back in a while.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Hi, Sabrina.
Hi, Dr. Foster.
It's great to see you on a Saturday.
Good to see you too.
As Shelley said, I'm a leukemia clinical investigator at Lineberger, and I was really fortunate to get involved early on with the immunotherapy program with John and Barbara, and serve as a principal investigator for the trial for ALL patients, or acute lymphoblastic leukemia patients, in which Sabrina participated. But really, I'm serving as an ambassador for a large team of doctors who took care of Sabrina, a lot of them with Chapel Hill connections. She was referred by Dr. Mike Duvas, who's a UNC-trained oncologist at UVA, and she initially saw Paul Armistead here in the stem cell transplant program. Before turning it over to Sabrina to really let her tell her story, I'd like to put her treatment into context. And for those of you who don't know a lot about acute lymphoblastic leukemia, it's important to share that we currently treat young adults with ALL similar to how we treat children. So this is the most common cancer of childhood, and through years of research, the pediatricians have really been able to cure the vast majority of children with ALL, upwards of 90%. And we've learned through the years from the pediatricians about how to adopt their successes. And this really has led to young adult patients being treated with 2 to 3 years of pretty grueling chemotherapy up front that many children can tolerate pretty well. And we know that young adults can too, but it's a lot of treatment. This involves conventional chemotherapy. So this is what we think of as non-targeted treatment that has a lot of off-target side effects like nerve damage, hair loss, bone problems, that type of thing. At this point, I'd like to share the floor with Sabrina and let her talk about her experiences up to the point where I met her.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Foster. I was initially diagnosed with ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, back in April of 2008. I had just graduated from college, and I was immediately taken to UVA with Dr. Michael Duvas, and I received treatment there. I've had to deal with ALL off and on for the past 13 to 14 years. I've had 3 recurrences since my first initial diagnosis. I've had multiple various chemotherapy, radiation, proton therapy radiation, a stem cell transplant that I had done at UNC with Dr. Armistead back in 2014. And then I've also gotten the CAR T-cell treatment therapy at UNC when I had the 3rd recurrence back in 2018. I was referred to come to UNC by my Dr. Dubas at UVA. He said he knew that they had a really strong program. And at first I was nervous because I'm a numbers person and I definitely wanted to know all of the side effects. I wanted to know if there had been a lot of research and trials done on it. So I will say when I initially came, I was very hesitant and very nervous, but the team made me feel so comfortable. And I can honestly say that it was the easiest treatment that I ever had compared to all of the previous treatments that I'd ever done for ALL to try to treat it. I had minimal side effects. I had a much shorter hospital stay than I had with any other treatment. And it definitely put me into remission. So I'm grateful for the teams at UNC for working with me and my doctor at UVA to get me this trial.
Well, we're certainly grateful that you came down to see us. Could you talk a little bit more about any particular side effects you had from the first, first treatment and the first treatment of the first recurrences?
With cancer in general, with the first treatments that I had with the chemotherapy and the radiation, I had hair loss. I had my appetite would not be there. I was very fatigued. It definitely took me much longer to recover. It would take me months to recover from the treatments. And it just definitely lessened my quality of life. With the CAR T therapy trials, my quality of life was never interfered with. I might have had a little upset stomach in the very beginning, maybe the first couple of days of the treatment, but there was hardly any fatigue. I was able to recover in weeks, not months, compared to the other treatments that I had. And I was able to still enjoy a quality of life, being able to go places and not having to be isolated or quarantined because of low blood counts. And that was definitely a great thing to me, as I've definitely tried to return back to normal as much as possible after every treatment that I have.
Yeah. Could you maybe walk us through some of the experience that you had when you first came into the hospital after, to undergo the therapy?
I will say on the first day I did cry because I was so nervous, just because I knew that it was still a new thing, and I knew that there wasn't a ton of information and there wasn't a ton of research. Well, there was research, but that the trials hadn't really been going on for tons of years like the previous treatments that I had before. But the team, the nurses, the doctors, they definitely eased my troubled mind, and they definitely made me feel very comfortable and very confident in their skills and their abilities to do the trial for me. In the injection of my older sister's CAR T cells, that was very much quicker than I thought it would be. And the hospital stay, it wasn't bad at all. It was a much easier hospital stay and stay in Chapel Hill than all of the previous treatments that I've ever had, including the stem cell transplant.
Yeah. Even though you remember it that way, I think I certainly remember you having a few fevers and things and making us concerned. But I'm glad that you remember it fondly.
Well, definitely compared to the other treatments that I've done, the more positive aspects of the CAR T treatment are the ones that stick out in my mind the most. as I had much fewer side effects, much fewer interruptions with like my daily life with the CAR T versus the other chemotherapy and radiation that I had in the past.
Yeah. So thanks. That's really enlightening, I hope, for the audience. I think one of the things that I have always enjoyed in terms of taking care of younger patients, as well as younger CAR T cell patients, is that this is a therapy that allows us as the doctor team and the medical team to kind of get out of the way of someone's life after the first initial period where there are risks of side effects. And I know, Sabrina and I have been keeping up, and I know what she's been up to since then. But I'd like her to share with the audience what she's been up to since her treatment.
Well, I currently work at Sweetbriar College as an administrative assistant in the dean's office. I've been involved with Stupid Cancer, which is a young adult cancer organization. I've been involved with Grit Health, which is another young adult cancer organization, with building their mental health council. And I've also been participating with Cerrode Pharmaceuticals and their patient expert council, and helping them with their marketing strategies with young adult cancer patients and what our needs are, since they're different from pediatric and different from geriatric patients. I've just been working with those organizations with what young adult cancer patients and survivors need.
That's wonderful. I'm glad that you've been able to engage in all those different ways. I think it's also been, your parents have been wonderful to work with and supportive and getting you down here from Virginia. So it's just been a real pleasure to work with you all this time and to get to continue to keep up with everything that you're accomplishing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Matt, let me ask you to expound on something. You mentioned, and I'm glad that Sabrina doesn't remember the fevers and chills right after. Sometimes when we do things to people with chemotherapy or other types of therapy, the therapy does damage and causes problems. The exciting thing about what probably happened with Sabrina and these fevers and chills is it's the result of a good thing. You want to explain that cytokine release syndrome?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a phenomenon whereby the immune system engages with, so the CAR T cell, being the immune system, in this case, engages with an antigen on the surface of the cancer cell and results in this cytokines or inflammatory proteins, elaborating from the anti-tumor response. Many folks are familiar with cytokines these days because of COVID-19, and that's responsible for symptoms of viral and other infections. So high fevers, which can turn into low blood pressure or difficulty breathing, respiratory failure, other organ failure. One of our goals here has been to try to mitigate those toxicities. There are a number of tools in the toolbox to manage that, that other institutions have used, namely steroids and an actually a rheumatology drug called tocilizumab. But recognizing that sometimes those therapies don't work. Another aspect of the unwanted effect of CAR T cells can be a neurologic syndrome called ICANS. Fortunately, Sabrina had actually a couple of episodes of fever, but never had really any neurologic side effects. Typically, the neurologic side effects are very transitory, as are the fevers and the CRS. So they're not long-term effects. But we really need to focus on getting patients through this period of risk safely. And so that's what I think patients experience and the risk and the early going after CAR T cells.
But the exciting thing about it is it's the product of the cancer cells dying. The reason why it sometimes is fairly dramatic, is because the therapy is so effective. And that's what's extraordinary about it, that it really does help clear the cancer cells in a dramatic fashion. And sometimes that yields this other issue. But I've heard that there are patients that get worried after they get CAR T if they don't get some fevers because they're afraid it's not working well enough. Right. So it's a classic double-edged sword. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but Sabrina doesn't even remember it. And yet it said, boy, this therapy is working in a way that others don't.
It certainly is a good biomarker for response. A lot of scientists work on biomarker development, but with CAR T cells, you have a very obvious clinical biomarker of response in the cytokine release syndrome.
Okay, Sabrina, any last words for us, for your doctors, for our generous donors who've helped put this program together?
Well, I definitely want to thank the donors for your support in supporting the CAR T program at UNC. I'm very appreciative of all the doctors and all of the nurses who were a part of my care team. It definitely made the process a lot easier, a lot smoother for me. And as you can see, I hardly remember the fevers or any of, if I had any effects from the CAR T trial, just compared to every other treatment that I've ever had. And I've had a lot. The benefit to me about this is that I only remember the positive things about the CAR T trial because it just was that much easier on my body and on me mentally than anything I've ever had.
Yeah. And that's so great. And it's bi-directional, Sabrina. You see the smile on Matt Foster's face. What he's helped you do, what you helped him do, has made his life better too.
Yeah, and I'll add my thanks to the donors as well. I think it's through your generosity we've been able to forge this relationship with Sabrina, other patients, and the large team of clinical support and researchers that are both here and not here on this meeting today. So.
Okay, well, thanks so much. And now we're going to have an opportunity to meet the people that made it happen. We thought it would be fun and obviously inspiring to have Sabrina talk about the end result. But as you can imagine, it didn't happen overnight. And we have two terrific faculty. John Cerrode is with us. John has been he actually had a little time at UVA himself, but had wonderful training here. We were fortunate to keep him on, and he has risen to be head of hematology. He is a worldwide expert in immunotherapy. He is the associate director of the Cancer Center for Translational Research. He's the interim chair of the bone marrow transplant and technology committees. And he doesn't have a lot of free time, but he's taken some of his time today to help put together this program. And he is joined by one of the true architects of what you just heard. Barbara Savaldo came to us along with her husband, Jim Petro-Doty. We decided a while back when Ned Sharpless was here, and Ned and myself and under John's guidance decided that we were missing the boat, that there were a couple of places that had gotten into this new types of therapy, and it was John's vision to develop this here from the ground up. And he and Barbara are going to talk about that. But first, with that introduction, we actually are going to see a brief video of John explaining the whole process of CAR T and then we're going to go into detail. So if we can start the video.
I'm Dr. Jonathan Cerrode, and I'm here to discuss an extremely interesting, novel, new form of cancer therapy called CAR T-cell immunotherapy. Cellular therapy is rapidly becoming the fourth pillar of cancer treatment, alongside chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. Here at UNC Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center, we're at the forefront of using CAR T-cell immunotherapy to unleash the body's own immune system to fight cancer. This therapy may sound like science fiction, but it's really quite simple. Cancer cells can be hard for the immune system to detect because they so often look like regular, healthy cells. But sometimes, cancer cells have these specific protein markers that we can target. Working with the patient's T cells, which is a type of white blood cell that fights disease, we genetically engineer these cells to now become CAR T cells. These CAR T cells can recognize tumor cells that normal white cells typically miss or overlook. In our manufacturing facility, we produce these cells by the hundreds of thousands. After passing a series of tests, the CAR T cells are brought to the North Carolina Cancer Hospital and infused into the patient. The CAR T cells now go to work, hunting down and then destroying the patient's cancer. UNC Lineberger is one of the few places in the country that has the ability to design, manufacture, and deliver these supercharged CAR T cells to patients. UNC scientists have even developed a unique safety switch that can turn off the CAR T cells if needed. All of this makes it possible for UNC Lineberger to provide not only today's best care, but tomorrow's best hope.
John, that was great. I love the video. And it didn't happen overnight. It took John's vision, investment from the state, investment from donors. You heard Sabrina. John and Barbara will talk about, we're over 100 patients now, but it had to start with a vision and at the beginning, and it's grown over these 5 years into something dramatic. So John, tell us about, at the beginning, your vision and why we needed to bring Barbara and Jim Petro here to work with you and other scientists.
Yes, thanks, Shelley. And hi, Sabrina. It's good to see you again as well. And I'd have to also comment that this was the vision of myself and Jenny Ting, who was the co-leader of the immunology program at the time. This was probably about 15 years ago. It was clear to us at that point in time that harnessing the immune system to treat cancer was going to become critical for the armamentarium of clinicians. And there were two roads that entities were going upon. One was a commercial road that led to the development of drugs like nivolumab and pembrolizumab, and the other was an academic road. On the academic road was harnessing a patient's own white cells to try to kill tumor cells. And that road was specific to the academic world because of the complexity of the process, required a manufacturing facility, and really the sophisticated science necessary to engineer the viruses, put the viruses into the T cells, grow them, and give them. And so we approached the Cancer Center leadership, initially Shelley and then Ned, about our interest in developing this. They were on board with this, but the critical part for us was kind of finding superb scientists, wonderful people, and really folks interested in collaborating across the whole landscape of the scientific environment at Carolina, which is a wonderfully collaborative environment. And when I went around to the people I knew in the community and asked about that, the two names that kept popping up were Gian Pietro and Barbara. And so we went out aggressively to try to bring both of them from Baylor to UNC. And I can say that I think that we did better than superb scientists, wonderful people, and excellent collaborators. These two are just phenomenal individuals, both scientifically and personally. They now flank my office, so I'm surrounded on both sides by the two of them. And it's really been, I think, a tremendous intellectual environment up on the floor that we're on, with new recruits coming in and the development of these products. We've now, I think, generated about 150 products. The lead product that Barbara developed about 15 years ago is now being commercially developed by a pharmaceutical company in a pivotal phase 2 study that's underway across the world that we hope will lead to a breakthrough therapy for patients with Hodgkin's lymphoma the safety switch has been unbelievably successful in the couple of patients that we've treated. And for instance, this week I saw a 62-year-old woman with acute lymphoblastic leukemia who's failed all traditional forms of therapy. And in the past, our discussion would have been a hospice discussion. And my discussion with her was, let's get CAR T cells manufactured. Let's give them, in all instances when we've done this, at a month after the treatment, everyone, 100% of the patients have gone into remission. Let's do this for you, and then we'll get you to a bone marrow transplant and try to cure you. And so being able to see Sabrina, being able to talk to patients like this, that kind of hope really kind of is what I think rejuvenates us. It gets me back to work every day, doing what we love to do and working with people that we love to work with.
So Barbara, I know a little bit about your history and your passion for this, because it wasn't even just at Baylor. It was prior to that in your training. You know, tell us a little bit about why you decided to make this switch to a place that were novices, but passionate about what we could do with you and Gianpietro.
So hi to everyone. Hopefully there are some familiar faces, although we can't see you. Hello to everyone. So yeah, I mean, I'm not used to be on the spotlight, so sorry if I, find myself a little in a strange position. I'm always, I'm usually behind the scene, but as you know, Shelley, we did work on this approaches for a long time, and it's been obviously one of our passion to try to work on things that can have an impact on the patient. And so this was, our story and our, training before coming to UNC has obviously been a dream for us. It was it's been very logistically difficult to develop this therapy and, acquire this expertise. We were in really a nice place that had the vision that this therapy would become a mainstream. And when this started to, everybody or a lot of cases around, the States became, aware of this option, UNC sounded like the best place to be. Mainly because, as you said, there was a vision. So first of all, because there was a vision, we saw how people where we were working with had this vision, and we recognized that UNC had a similar approach to this. But also because there were the expertise that complemented what we were bringing on. So we were obviously know how to do this, to create this therapy, but this is just a piece of the story. You need to have clinicians like John and Matt Foster that can recruit patients and understand where this therapy can go. We need the regulatory expertise, because these are regulated therapy from FDA, and so there is a lot of a complex interaction with the federal agencies, and the infrastructure are to do this therapy are not trivial. And so UNC had, committed to this vision, and I think this was very important. And in addition to this, obviously the science that is ongoing at UNC is stellar, and so that obviously was a right place to further develop, novel approaches. And I should say that also Chapel Hill in North Carolina, it's a beautiful place. So that also helped a lot for us to make a decision to move.
And for us, it was a great decision. It is clear, and we've made it clear, and I think you delivered on our commitment. But boy, it was a leap of faith for you and Gianpietro, because we didn't have it. We had to build from the ground up. And I think one of the proudest things is that the way John and Gianpietro and Barbara and others have done that so quickly. I will comment.
Can I just add,
yes.
Shelley? So that actually, you're right. You said it's a leap of faith, but I do think that I was thinking about what Sabrina said about, trusting, people. So the doctors with the therapy that is a phase 1 therapy. So there are novel that have, and so I think this is what UNC Inspire or the Lineberger Cancer Center inspires, that you can go ahead with this leap of faith.
Yeah. So John brought this idea to us, and I will never forget when you recruit faculty, they give a seminar. And down in the Pagano conference room, we got to hear Barbara and Jim Petro talk about their vision and their science. And I think John described it. I sat in the back of that room and said, this is science fiction. This is something I love science fiction, and I've read about things like this since my childhood, and to have a chance to be involved has been spectacular. So John, you and Barbara, what has transpired to get us to this point? We started with 1, and now we're at 150. That makes us one of the biggest programs in the country. What has that taken? How's it evolved? What is the science that are continuing to move us forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to quote other folks, but it does take a village to do this. We've got a group, I think, as Barbara had mentioned, of about 35 or 40, maybe 45 individuals that meet. All of them are critically important. A tremendous number of things that we do are supported by philanthropic support. That's been absolutely essential for us to be able to move ahead. I think one of the things that I'm immensely proud of is we've treated 150 patients, and to the best of my knowledge, we're one of the few centers in the world that hasn't seen a death from these unbelievable novel therapies. And that's a tribute to the wonderful care across the board that we get from our clinical partners and the phenomenal group of individuals that work with us. I think we've now gotten to the point where we're going to start to try to tackle the more common diseases. Most of the CAR T-cell therapies up until now have been focused around hematologic malignancies, leukemias, and lymphomas. Those are awful diseases when you have them, but the overwhelming burden of cancer are around solid tumors, lung cancer, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, et cetera. And we're going to start to tackle those. Those are harder to tackle. I think for us that's a bigger challenge, and perhaps, a kind of challenge at a place like Carolina should get its arms around. We have wonderful scientists and wonderful preclinical approaches to try to figure out how to make those CAR T cells work better, and to start the process of trying to see if we can provide the cures that we've seen in some of our lymphoma and leukemia patients to these more common solid tumors.
I want to switch to Barbara for a second, but I want to comment on something that John's said that is extraordinary. Every one of these protocols is a first in human trial. We are experimenting in the best sense of the word. We're not experimenting willy-nilly. We're doing it from science, from understanding in the animal, from understanding in people, and we're moving forward. But these are clinical trials, and we have done it in a way that has been effective with less toxicity. But most clinical trials don't start this way. You start with something in a phase 1 trial, and you're just trying to see if it's safe. What these faculty have done is to create something that's not only safe, that's effective. So Barbara, take us through, John mentioned that we're now, I won't say leaving the easy diseases, because no one who's treated ALL or leukemias or Hodgkin's disease that is advanced would call it an easy disease. But John mentioned that we're moving on to diseases that don't have therapies that work. How do you see moving the science back and forth into the clinic?
So I think that a great model that we are using is obviously trying to learn from our experience in the treatment of patients with blood cancer and trying to see what have we learned, where are potential weaknesses that we can identify or we can see for solid tumors. And among the first thing that you can put on your list is obvious trafficking. So T cells or these therapies are delivered to the peripheral vein. But obviously, for example, if we're thinking about brain tumor, maybe the number of cells that delivered through the blood may be able to traffic to the brain is limited. And so you want to be in your best case scenario where you have a lot of T cells at the tumor sites. And so what we are while developing this therapy and testing them in patient or using them for patient, we're also thinking ahead what will be the next phase, new way to deliver these cells. And this is where, the tremendous collaboration that we have with other scientists here at UNC is putting us at the forefront. How to maybe even combine this therapy with something else that we know have activity. The tumor is more complex, especially solid tumors are more complex environment for these T cells to work. And so this is where the research goes in parallel. And so this continues going from the bench to the bedside and back to the bench is, a nice model that helps us moving forward even faster.
So John, we have started a trial. You and Paula Garrick and others have started a trial in Gempetro on a solid tumor, ovarian cancer. Do you want to tell, because we're very early on in that, but I think we're excited about it.
Yeah, so this is a first in man, I guess this would be more correctly a first in woman trial, using an approach that's a little bit different, kind of more aligned with what Barbara was talking about. So ovarian cancer, when it spreads, often spreads throughout the abdominal cavity, the peritoneum, which becomes a problem for treatment. The CAR T cells that we're engineering are going to recognize a protein called B7H3, which is a protein that's expressed by ovarian cancers, and also some of the support cells that nourish the ovarian cancer cells. And then we infuse those CAR T cells directly into the peritoneum. So instead of giving them, as we've done previously, intravenously, these are instilled right where the cancer is found, in the hope that we can increase the number of cells that can get into the tumor nest in the peritoneum and kill those cells. So we're quite early in those studies. As Shelley said, these are initially safety studies. So far, the treatment has been safe. It's too early probably to have a signal for outcome, but I think we're encouraged that we've been able to engineer the cells, we've been able to infuse the cells, we've been able to do this through the catheter, which is the first time we've done that at Carolina safely. And we'll go on for the next little bit and see how effective these are.
Okay. So Barbara, the thing which you and John and Gempetro and so many others have built, we've reached saturation in our GMP facility, a great sign of success. So, tell us what's happening right now out at the Quadrangle building.
Yeah, so I think that two of the challenges, the practical challenges that we have because we've been successful, if you can allow me the term, is obviously more work and more product, so more patient. We want to enroll and try, treat more patient and open more protocols. And obviously, we have run out of space because obviously these are complex procedures that they require special rooms and so on, and special talented people to do this work. And so yes, the two major challenges are expansion. So that's how this expansion is being completed, is almost done, and this is very exciting. It's really amazing, the possibility that we can now do a lot more product, more vector and so on. and obviously the accrual and retention of the right personnel. I think those are really important aspects that we needed to focus in parallel with the science, because the two things are connected.
You know, it's so we are completing a tripling of the size of the unit. They did all this work in about 6,000 square feet, and there's this commercial that UPS used to have about logistics and developing the logistics of harvesting the T cells from patients and taking them out to the GMP facility and working with them and growing up billions of them and making them into tumor fighting cells. John and Barbara, there's a lot of people and cellular engineering that goes on, but we've done that. We've been successful. So now we're tripling the size, and it's going to give us enormous capability to grow the program. So John, what do you see in the future for utilizing this wonderful new space that gives us more opportunities?
Yeah, as Barbara said, we will have a vastly greater ability to both manufacture viruses. So a CAR T cell manufacturing process is kind of a multi-step process, but the pivotal parts of this are creating the virus, be it a gamma retrovirus or lentivirus that goes into the white cells. And then after you introduce the virus, being able to grow and expand those. And that's often done in different parts of the facility. And this is basically a manufacturing facility that's a small component that would be seen in a pharma company. So it basically will make products that the FDA can approve that we can give. We will have much greater potential to make viruses. I think we'll expand into different types of viruses from the ones that we have done. We will also, I think, have a much greater capacity, as Barbara said, to generate more products with the hope that we'll be able to start manufacturing either virus or virally transduced cells and sending those to collaborators who want to work with us. So we have a number of partners throughout the US that would love to take our technology to their patients. It's been real challenging during COVID to get folks to be able to fly to Chapel Hill. They would love to be able to do this. We've been limited because of bandwidth in our GMP, but this should enable us the opportunity to start to develop our technologies outside of this area to capture the largest number of patients possible. So I think it's really an unbelievably exciting time for us to be able to do this, to be able to manufacture at scale, to have the capacity to make multiple different viruses and the capacity to open multiple different clinical trials through the GMP.
It is extraordinarily exciting. One of the things that John mentioned is actually being able to use a little different virus. The science in these two people's labs and labs up in our immuno-oncology program is tackling, how do we get these CAR T cells into the pancreas for pancreatic cancer or glioblastoma, as Barbara said. Sometimes the science tells us we actually need to put a couple of genes in the CAR T cell, not just the one that recognizes it. And so using different kinds of viruses, we can be more facile to move the science that we develop in the labs into patients. John also mentioned, I think, the future, which we're absolutely working through. There are medical, legal, there are liability issues, but we fully intend to be one of the world's top places for this. But even we can't treat everybody. And so what John mentioned about the future of trying to work with others, maybe having them send their patients here for the beginning and then go back home and being taken care of, or maybe even manufacturing. So particularly so that we can do things in rarer diseases. Pediatric diseases are ones where children and their families don't necessarily want to travel far. So how do we work with pediatric hospitals to make this work? So we'll be back in future Lineberger clubs to tell you about the future of this program, because There's no way that we're going to stop advancing this. It's just too exciting. So I'm going to wrap this up by asking John or Barbara for any last comments about the science and the future.
Yeah, I just want to take a few seconds at the end just to thank everybody who's on the call, who's helped us, and those folks who weren't able to attend who have helped us. We would love to have people come through and watch us do what we do, either up on our floor in Marsico or out at the GMP. I think, you know, the unsung heroes are the ton of people that support Barbara and myself who do this, and all of the folks on this call who have really made it possible for us to do this. And, you know, I think stories like Sabrina's are why hopefully we do what we do, and why hopefully people on this call are interested in supporting us. And I think it's really something that's, you know, I find unbelievably satisfying each day to be able to come in, you know, work with the people I work with who are tremendously talented and phenomenal people, but to move the science forward to try to hopefully cure a person who 10 years ago couldn't be cured. So thank you all for what you've done.
Yeah, I also wanted to thank and say that, you know, our mission here is to create a legacy, to create and to train new people so that we can continue this. And I think that we're here for the long term and invested for the long. Thank you for helping us, you know, realizing this dream and that makes an impact on patients.
The campaign for Carolina is coming to a close this year. It has been a remarkable stimulation. There have been some families that have actually funded some of these CAR T trials and will continue to fund them and grow this program. I'm enormously excited about this. It just combines the science that the three of us on this call that have labs that get involved in the interstices of how the immune system and cells work and how cancers work. But there's nothing like seeing Sabrina and the end result. So I'll turn it over to Holly.
Thank you, Shelley. And this was a wonderful program. Thank you all for making the time this morning to be with us. One thing I did want to mention to everyone who's on the call is we have put in the mail for you a small care package. Since we cannot be together, we wanted to send you a little something to thank you all for what you do. And enclosed in there will be information about our immunotherapy program. Just a little more detail, and for ways in which, if you have any questions and are interested in supporting the work or visiting the facility, as Dr. Cerrode mentioned, we'd love to have you. So please feel free to reach out to any one of us. And thank you again. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend.